You need to hear this calmly, without fear, without guilt, and without the noise that usually surrounds conversations about work and retirement. Because if you are still working past 55, the real question is no longer whether you are capable of continuing. It is whether continuing is quietly costing you the very life you believe you are protecting. Most people convince themselves they are being responsible by staying longer, that they are doing the mature thing, the careful thing, the sensible thing. But from where I stand now, that belief is one of the most dangerous stories we tell ourselves, because the truth is not that people retire too early. The truth is that most people retire too late. They retire when their health has already started to decline in ways they don't want to admit, when their energy is thinner than it used to be, when their patience is shorter, when relationships have slowly cracked from years of postponement, and then they expect retirement to magically repair everything that was neglected. They imagine they will finally relax, finally enjoy life, finally slow down. But by then the window has already narrowed, and the body, the mind, and the relationships no longer respond the way they once did. You were never meant to grind for your entire life. You were meant to work for a season, to contribute, to build, to learn, and then to step into a different season where the reward is not money or titles, but time, presence, health, and freedom. I didn't plan to leave work when I did. I was 53 years old, deeply embedded in my career, and a corporate merger quietly changed everything. Two companies came together, and suddenly the role I believed was permanent became replaceable overnight. When I submitted what I called my retirement proposal, I genuinely thought someone would push back, that someone would say, "We need you. Stay a little longer. We can't afford to lose you." But instead the response was efficient, polite, and painfully clear. By Monday, someone else would be sitting in my seat. I could mentor them for a short period, and then after 35 years, I would be gone. That moment was hard, not because I loved the endless meetings or the packed calendars, but because I loved the people, the sense of belonging, the pride, the loyalty, the teamwork, the feeling that what I did mattered to someone every single day. Work had quietly become more than income. It had become identity, and losing that all at once forces you to confront a question most people avoid for decades. Who am I without this role? For me, work was even more deeply rooted. I was the fourth-generation owner of a family business started by my great-grandfather in 1910, and when my brother and I sold it, something deeper than a business transaction happened. A part of me quietly died that day. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself. But it took time to understand that something fundamental had shifted. Eventually, I went all in with the new company, and I loved the structure, the hierarchy, the merit-based culture, the energy of leadership, the meetings where ideas were exchanged and challenged, and I believed I would stay there until 65, maybe 70, maybe longer. I imagined myself remaining relevant, contributing, staying in the game. But something changed. There wasn't a single moment, just a growing awareness that staying longer would not give me more life. It would only give me more familiarity. Leaving was not easy. We lost structure, we stumbled, we became unhealthy for a while. But looking back now, I can say with complete honesty that leaving when I did gave me the space to grow as a human being in ways that were impossible inside the grind. Most people don't stay in their jobs because they love the work itself. They stay because work provides structure, and structure is comforting. It tells you when to wake up, where to go, who needs you, and why you matter. And when people step into retirement without intentionally rebuilding that structure, they drift. They become bored, restless, unhealthy, and then they say retirement failed them, when in reality, they failed to design it. Another reason people stay too long is because they continue chasing an old definition of success. Accumulation, recognition, titles, growth. That definition works in one season of life, but it becomes destructive in the next. Success later in life looks different. It looks like peace. It looks like physical capability. It looks like waking up without dread. It looks like having the energy to do simple things well. For me, success eventually became something very small and very honest. I wanted to do one pull-up. Just one. Not to impress anyone, not to post online, but to prove to myself that strength still mattered. Another trap people fall into is assuming they will figure retirement out when they get there. I hear from people who retired a year ago, got bored, lost purpose, became unhealthy, and went back to work. Not because they needed the money, but because they had not planned for meaning. This phase of life cannot be improvised. It must be designed. Retirement is not a retreat. It is a rebirth, and the word itself is outdated. When it was first used centuries ago, leaving work usually meant the end of life was near. Today, leaving work can mean 20 or 30 years still ahead. These are not decline years. These are discovery years. You already have what it takes. You have led, solved problems, made decisions, managed risk, built relationships. You are not starting over. You are reapplying your strengths in a new direction. For many people, this phase becomes the best chapter of life, but only if they approach it intentionally. If you are still working past 55, ask yourself honestly whether you are staying because you love the work or because you are afraid of what comes next. Because time does not slow down for loyalty. It does not reward delay, and it does not give extensions. What most people don't realize until much later is that staying too long quietly steals something far more valuable than money. It steals adaptability, curiosity, and health. And once those begin to fade, rebuilding them becomes harder than anyone wants to admit. This next phase of life requires a completely different way of measuring worth, because if you continue using the same scoreboard you used in your 40s and 50s, you will always feel behind, restless, or incomplete. The truth is that productivity is no longer the point. Alignment is. Fulfillment is no longer found in output, but in how honestly your days reflect who you are becoming. One of the most important shifts you can make is learning to audit your energy instead of your income. Ask yourself, without defensiveness, which parts of your work still give you genuine energy and which parts quietly drain you every single week. Then imagine what your life would look like if the next 20 years were built only around what energizes you. That thought alone makes many people uncomfortable, because it forces them to confront how much of their life has been structured around endurance instead of choice. Fulfillment does not arrive as a single realization. It emerges through repetition, through sitting with the same questions long enough that the answers stop changing, through journaling not to be productive, but to be honest, through asking yourself what actually makes a day feel complete when no one is watching. Many people confuse comfort with fulfillment, but comfort alone will not sustain you for the next 2 or 3 decades. Exposure is another critical piece that most people overlook. If all you see are stories of retirement that failed, boredom, decline, regret, then of course you will hesitate. But when you spend time with people who are thriving in this phase, who are active, curious, learning, building relationships, contributing in ways that matter to them, your imagination begins to expand. You start to see that retirement is not an ending, but a reallocation of attention. Alignment with your partner becomes even more important here, because this phase magnifies everything that was already present. Differences in vision, pace, desire, and lifestyle do not disappear when work ends. They become louder, and avoiding those conversations now guarantees resentment later. Honest alignment is not about agreement on everything. It is about understanding what each of you needs to feel alive in the years ahead. Another powerful way to loosen your attachment to the grind is to begin experimenting now, not later. Introduce one new habit into your life that requires time, intention, and presence. Something small but unfamiliar. A daily walk without headphones, writing without an agenda, reaching out to someone you have neglected. When you feel how nourishing that change is, you begin to understand how much life you have been postponing for a future that keeps moving further away. This phase of life must be designed deliberately, because anything that is not designed will default into mediocrity. Many people drift into retirement and say it is okay. But the real question is whether okay is how you want to live the next 30 years. This is not a short chapter. This is potentially the longest season of your life, and it deserves the same level of intention you once gave your career. One of the biggest mistakes people make is underestimating how much time they still have, while simultaneously overestimating how much energy they will always have. Time may be abundant, but energy is not guaranteed, and health does not respond well to last-minute urgency. Relationships remember absence. The body remembers neglect. The mind remembers years of postponement. None of these reset just because work ends. That is why waiting until you feel completely ready is such a dangerous illusion. Readiness often comes after action, not before it. When you step away with intention, when you replace structure rather than abandon it, when you redefine success instead of chasing an outdated version of it, something subtle but profound happens. Life begins to feel lighter, not because it is easier, but because it is more honest. You begin to notice how much of your time was spent enduring instead of choosing, how many decisions were made out of habit rather than alignment. Contribution does not disappear when employment ends. It changes form. Mentorship becomes voluntary rather than obligatory. Learning becomes self-directed instead of imposed. Service becomes personal rather than institutional. This is not a loss of relevance. It is a shift in relevance. And if you listen carefully to yourself, you will feel when that shift is calling you. Fear often disguises itself as responsibility, and habit often disguises itself as loyalty, but neither should be allowed to decide the shape of the rest of your life. Ask yourself honestly what you would do if you knew you had 20 healthy years left, not hypothetically, but practically. Ask yourself whether the way you are living now matches the way you want to remember your life later, because no one reaches the end wishing they had spent more time proving their usefulness to systems that replaced them without hesitation. Many people reach the end wishing they had trusted themselves sooner. If you are still working past 55, listen carefully, not with panic, but with clarity. You are not running out of usefulness, you are running out of unlived life, and that is the one resource that cannot be earned back, negotiated, or delayed. The life you are postponing does not begin someday. It begins the moment you decide that your remaining time deserves your full attention. You have led, solved problems, made decisions, managed risk, built relationships. You are not starting over. You are reapplying your strengths in a new direction. For many people, this phase becomes the best chapter of life, but only if they approach it intentionally. If you are still working past 55, ask yourself honestly whether you are staying because you love the work or because you are afraid of what comes next. Because time does not slow down for loyalty. It does not reward delay, and it does not give extensions.